Hello, today I'm going to talk about adding higher life forms to a terraformed Mars. So once Mars' surface has been warmed to temperatures close to or approaching freezing, the atmosphere has been supplemented with oxygen and nitrogen, and the dead regolith has begun to be changed into living soil. Then advanced plants and animals can be considered for introduction. Higher plants can survive down to about minus 70 degrees Celsius, that's about minus 94 Fahrenheit. But for completion of their life cycles, multicellular organisms have a limit of about minus 2, that's 28 Fahrenheit. Ensuring diversity and letting nature do most of the work are the key elements here, as are a generalist lifestyle and a species' ability to reproduce rapidly. If all of these are in place, nature will have a better chance of establishing itself without constant human assistance or interference. Therefore, the first plants to be added could be wind-pollinated, for example, the invasive Vasey grass, which has wind-distributed seeds, and then the wind will do most of the work. The first flowering plant could be the invasive dandelion, which occurs from Argentina right up to northern Europe and has wind-distributed seeds and can reproduce asexually. Asexuality is good for producing rapid growth, while sexuality is better at dealing with complex and ever-changing selection pressures of a biological environment. So a combination of the two is ideal. Another benefit of using dandelions as an example is that they are edible. So they could feed many animal species, and although their flavour is not to everyone's taste, we could eat them as well. Being invasive makes species highly versatile and capable of adapting to new environments. So this is why they are more likely to prosper and be extremely useful on a new Martian ecosystem. In order to be categorised as invasive, they will have had to have overcome geographic, environmental, reproductive and dispersal barriers on Earth. Genetic diversity is a further barrier that these species face, as if only a few individuals are introduced, it would result in a slow adaptive preparation to the new environment, after which they could become truly invasive. Such species tend to be highly competitive, fast reproducers that can rapidly adapt to unfamiliar environments. Insect pollinators could be added later when there is sufficient pollen and nectar for them. They could be selected based on their range and adaptability on Earth. So buff-tailed bumblebees might be a useful early introduction, as they're highly adaptable and invasive in some countries. It might even be possible to just use invasive species as first stage introductions in an alien environment, but there is also a risk that they may not provide the ecosystem services, providing food and nectar and other things required of them. If terraformers focus solely on species categorised as invasive on Earth, they run the risk of developing what might be called a Frankenstein ecosystem, as it would be like taking single pieces from many different jigsaw puzzles and trying to fit them all together. However, invasive species could be used as pioneers or early catalysts to make the environment ready for other species. For example, dandelions and buff-tailed bumblebees might work well together. They do on Earth, and allow other species to capitalise on their success. Many plants can only produce seeds if their flowers are pollinated by insects, and we would expect insects to require the same sort of atmospheric pressure that humans do on Earth. But studies have found that insects kept at pressures as low as 1/5 of a bar, that's 0.2 bars, for over 24 hours, do not appear to be affected by the pressure, nor does insect size seem to affect the low pressures that they can tolerate. However, highly active insects like bees need at least 0.3 of a bar, as about a third of our atmospheric pressure on Earth, to maintain their activity levels. In addition to the problems of oxygen uptake at low pressure, water availability is also important. Below 0.15 bars, smaller insects suffer dehydration and will seek water sources rather than continuing their normal behaviour. Other studies show that bees, which are very efficient pollinators, can tolerate 0.5 of a bar, half a bar, but suffer reduced respiration below this level. The critical point at which insect movement ceases and respiration shuts off is as low as 0.03 bars. That's 3% of a normal pressure on Earth. Most insects will not endure raised carbon dioxide levels for long, although a few, such as tsetse flies, can tolerate 10% carbon dioxide, provided there is 21% oxygen as well. However, substantially higher carbon dioxide concentrations would kill all insects. About 87.5% of flowering plants are pollinated by animals, mostly insects. However, we rely heavily on wind-pollinated grasses such as wheat and rice for the food we eat. Thus, the percentage of plants grown for human consumption or forage and requiring animal pollination is lower at about 35%. In addition to bees, other animals perform services for plants without which they would fail to thrive or survive. For example, in northern Greenland, temperatures are too low for bees, so pollination is performed by flies. Another example is earthworms, which aerate the soil, allowing oxygen to access roots and carbon dioxide to escape. They also ensure that water and oxygen can reach deeper levels of the soil and that nutrients are recycled, thereby increasing microbial biomass and watering plant roots. Other insects such as ants, termites and arthropods also need oxygen, as do fungi and protozoa, which make up parts of the soil biomass and are involved in recycling nutrients. Finally, other animals, ranging from jays and squirrels to musk oxen and horses, also assist in planting seeds and thereby spreading forests. However, their oxygen requirements are more like ours. It's worth mentioning here that Mars is significantly further from the Sun than we are, and therefore will be colder than Earth. Additionally, each degree temperature rise will have a huge cost for the terraformers, so the environment is more likely to be like Alaska, Canada or Siberia than Central Europe or the lower 48 US states. A remaining problem with many animals is that they learn from their mothers rather than just from instinct. This includes what to eat, where to find food, how to interact with each other, and which species to fear. Assuming that the astronauts would not want to carry live animals like bears and elk on their long journey to Mars, it would be safer and better if the young animals could be grown from frozen embryos and taught survival skills by robotic foster parents. This might mean they are taught to fear robotic predators by robotic foster mothers long before real predators are introduced. When it comes to the first predator introductions, which would be needed to keep deer populations from destroying complete forests and becoming weak and diseased, the first young predators may require a robotic ecosystem to support their survival, including robot foster parents, robot prey, robotic competitors and robotic super predators. For example, the introduction of young wolves to Mars might require the presence of robot tigers, snow leopards, mountain lions, bears, coyotes and elk. Because of its geography, Mars will have just one land mass and a single ocean, so it would be better to collect animals and plants which have evolved together in a similar geography, a similar ecosystem. The most similar ecosystem on Earth is that surrounds the Arctic Ocean, so species might include elk, caribou, black and brown bears and puma mountain lions. Out on the Northern Ocean, species might include seals and walrus and polar bears, but the exact composition will be determined by eventual temperature and the presence or absence of sea ice. However, penguins would be excluded as they come from a completely different ecosystem and would soon be eaten by the bears anyway. In the long term, the biggest problem for our future terraforming descendants is that they will be faced by climate change, which may make some cold-tolerant species extinct. So it's up to us today to try and keep them alive in whatever ways we can, so that they'll be useful for us when we need them. Bringing them back from extinction would be incredibly hard or possibly impossible, so don't hope to include mammoths in the forests on Mars, although there is a small possibility, but we can live in hope on that one. But it's better to have them alive and actually living on Earth, and for them to provide the genetic material we need rather than trying to dig them up out of frozen peat. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.